Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 89 of Cutscene Convos. We've got a monster episode this week. Our character profile is on the one and only Anti-Venom. We've got absolute madness from Loki in episode 4, even more madness and head-popping goodness in Gen V episode 7. We'll be previewing Invincible season 2. We've got a very busy Nerd News network with lots of Marvel leaks and rumours before wrapping everything up with our content championship, Daredevil versus Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings. But before all that, Horizontal, how's your week been?
See what you did there with the head popping. How has my week been? My week has been a weird one. I've kind of, lost track of days. What day of the week?
Days are unimportant.
Mate, they've all blended. Just doing bits of work, playing a lot of CS, having a lot of bad games of CS. Obviously we had this week's episodes and stuff that all went down, which were some wild episodes, which we'll be getting into. And then, just really hooked on CS and diving into making CS skins, which has been becoming a fun little side thing to do. And then essentially some new work projects on the horizon, which is always good.
Awesome.
So yeah, kind of a bit of a weird week all over the place. Different things going on with family and stuff, but all good otherwise. How's your week been?
I've also had a pretty strange week. I've done a lot of things I don't normally do.
Okay.
So me and Jenna have kind of a rule where we she doesn't really do horror films. So like Halloween, I can always get her to agree to do one for like the culture.
Yeah,
but she was working on Halloween, so we booked tickets to go see the Five Nights at Freddy movie at the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I liked it.
Okay.
It's not a great film.
Okay.
It's not a masterpiece of cinema. It's very watchable though.
Okay.
Like incredibly watchable. And like if they do a sequel, which I think they're planning on, I'll go watch it. It was a good laugh.
Fair.
Matthew Lillard, going back to his roots as a horror villain, is class. It was a completely passable film. And I mean, I'm not deep in the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom whatsoever. I understand enough, but it's become Blumhouse's biggest ever opening, which is fucking impressive.
Yeah.
It made like 90 million globally in its open weekend, which is massive for a horror film.
Yeah.
On like a $25 million budget.
That's not bad. It's not bad at all.
Like it's class, and the animatronics they used. So, for those who don't know Five Nights at Freddy's, it's Chuck E. Cheese but murderous robots.
Yeah.
And like so, the way they've done it is all most of it is practical.
Yeah.
So they actually built animatronic suits that had puppeteers. Phenomenal, so good. Really, really impressed with the puppeteering and stuff. Practical effects are alive and well, folks.
We love.
We just need to keep putting pressure on the big studios to use it.
Yeah.
And then, in my infinite wisdom, on Halloween, I decided I wanted to do something spooky still. Now, I love horror films, I love horror shows, and I love watching horror games. My big problem is I can't play horror games because I'm a giant baby once I'm in control. Like, you will sit there and watch horror film with me, and like I'll flinch a little bit, but for the most part, like, I don't actually get phased. But it comes to horror game, and I just turn into a giant baby. And I thought Resident Evil Village was on sale for like 12 quid. I was like, fuck it, I'll buy that. We'll turn the fucking light red. We'll sit here all in our room, nice and spooky, and we'll play Resident Evil Village. Jesus Christ, man. The sound design in that game is really good. Okay. And I turned on their 3D audio. So when I've got these on, I can't hear basically anything other than someone like in the room. But out on the hallway outside, the floor is quite creaky. And I know that I've lived in this house my whole life. So I'm sat here and I'm hearing from the game creaky floorboards behind me as like that. Like,
so then you're jumpy
audio.
thinking
so I'm like
there.
looking around thinking that someone's about to sneak into my fucking room to try and scare me. Yeah. So like it was fun in the sense of I'm sure it was fun for people to watch,
yeah.
and like it was good content, that's for
I'm
sure.
I'm
But
surprised you didn't try the one that all the streamers were doing. That
don't scream. I
yeah.
think that's only early access. I don't know if you can actually get it yet, or if you have to be
okay.
invited. But that does look very good. So yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that a lot. And I played Halo for the first time in a while.
Oh shit! Infinite.
Yeah,
Oh damn.
it was kind of fun.
I don't know. I just got. I've been so burnt by Halo.
I plugged my controller in at first because I'm a controller boy by nature, and it felt horrid. I had like one decent game out of like 10, but I just felt like I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, okay, I need to work out if I'm just can't play Halo and I'm like it just doesn't feel good, or if like I've just now played mouse and keyboard primarily for so long that Halo's just too big an adjustment for me.
Yeah.
So like I switched over to mouse and keyboard straight away. It felt so much better, and I'm like, oh okay, Halo is just mouse and keyboard for me now.
You're just not a controller kid anymore.
Yeah, we've all got to grow up eventually, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, you do.
And that was actually like scarily fun. I didn't expect to have that much fun, but I just had a couple of hours to kill, so I did that.
I've heard people are enjoying it more now, but I'm just burnt.
I need to look in some of the Forge stuff and see if there's anything fun to be done there.
I think there is a few fun things.
Oh, what I need to do is not re-download Fortnite like all of my friends want me to do.
I'm so my TikTok
Don't
has been putting me so deep in the feels the past few days.
It's not going to be the same. We are different.
I know it's
now.
not, but it's like it's putting me so much in like there's only a couple of periods in my life where I'm like, oh, I wish I could go back and start fresh from there. One is like year 10, 11 of high school when it was COD Zombies Prime. Like getting grind zombies all like it was just pure enjoyment back there. No worries in the world. The other is Fortnite, like early days. Like 2017 to 2018. Like it was such a good year. And my TikTok's like remembering what was gaming like in 2017, Dad? And then it's like a montage of like the OG Fortnite, and I'm sending it to my mate who me and him used to duo all the time, and we're both like, oh, what a time that was. Take us back.
My Fortnite squad, since we last played, you've now got me, who has finished education altogether.
Yeah.
And has a job and is buying a home. You've got another one of my friends who's got engaged, got married, and bought a home. Another one of my friends who now has a child.
Wild.
Like, it's a different world we're living in. Like, I can't be going back. I can't be slipping back into it, Hori.
The only difference for me is I'm not at uni.
Like, especially once I log into that account and see all the skins I have, because then it's gonna get me again.
We can boot up in the OG skins.
Dreadful stuff. It's not gonna be the same where I refuse to download it. He will probably download it.
I might download it, I'll be honest.
Anyway, should we get into actual things people are here for?
I think we should.
So, this week's character profile, as I teased last week, is on Anti-Venom.
Yes.
A character that I don't know how well known they are. I wouldn't think they're massively well known. They're going to be a lot more well known now, I expect, after making a big boy debut in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
So let's have a little talk about it. So, Anti-Venom is a symbiote derived from the Venom symbiote. Okay. They made their first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 569 in August 2008.
Okay.
Long after the Venom symbiote had separated from Eddie Brock, Eddie developed cancer and as a result started working as a volunteer for the Feast organization. As he worked at Feast, he became close with Martin Lee, the founder of Feast, and also the alter ego of supervillain Mr. Negative. Oh. After learning of his condition, Lee decided to use his powers to help Eddie and cure his cancer.
Oh.
Unknown to him at the time, while helping Eddie, he had accidentally infused remnants of the venom symbiote which lived inside Eddie to Eddie's white blood cells, where they would create the new symbiote hybrid Anti-Venom.
Oh, shit.
However, this would remain dormant inside Eddie until the Venom symbiote tried to leave its host at the time, which was Mark Gargan, aka Scorpion, and return to Eddie. This would cause the symbiote to manifest in Eddie, who dubbed it Anti-Venom. Eddie quickly discovered that the Anti-Venom symbiote was very different from other symbiotes that he'd encountered in a number of ways, but most notably, it was actually non-sentient and mindless.
Oh.
This allowed Eddie to be in complete control of the symbiote and all of its abilities, with none of the complications of fighting another consciousness. But it also had another change to other symbiotes in that it had tremendous healing powers, as well as being able to produce antibodies to cure any disease, as well as removing impurities from the human body. So it's interesting because obviously that a lot of that comes from the idea that a venom symbiote, which is very powerful, got fused with a white blood cell, and that's what the white blood cells do. They protect the human body. But also it's the anti-venom because it's not trying to take over its host and dictate what it does. It's just mega powerful living suit that does what it's told.
Yeah.
The symbiote was destroyed, however, when it was used to cure the spider virus. Or was it?
I don't know what the spider virus is.
The spider virus was a virus created from genes of Peter Parker to essentially turn anyone with like spider powers into a mindless creature, and it hurt humans as well.
Gotcha.
So the symbiote, because of its healing properties, was used to create a cure to the spider virus, but this destroyed the symbiote.
Okay.
Alchemax, one of the many evil corporations in the Marvel world, people might recognize the name from the Miles Morales game, got a very small sample of the anti-venom symbiote and used it in a myriad of ways, including kind of regrowing it to an extent. And it was used to then morph with Flash Thompson, who had been Agent Venom. After he returned from war, missing legs, he got bonded with the Venom symbiote, and he was able to calm the symbiote's mind. And he worked as Agent Venom for a long time, and he is currently working as Agent Anti-Venom. A part of the recovered symbiote that Alchemax had, they were getting all the types of symbiotes they could to see if they could create strains of the symbiote they could have complete control over, thinking they could use the anti-venom as like a base for this easy to control stuff, and then mix others in with it. So they mixed the anti-venom and the Carnage symbiote.
Sure, that went well.
Which created Misery. Which is quite an interesting symbiote. We won't talk about it too much, but essentially because it's part anti-venom and part Carnage, the two halves are constantly trying to destroy each other and heal themselves, and they're stable because they're like having to keep each other balanced, which is almost what they were trying to do.
But more chaotic.
In a more chaotic way. Anti-Venom's a really interesting character. I didn't click while playing the game they were about to drop Anti-Venom on us, but in reality, it was pretty obvious. You're inside Peter's body trying to find a bit of the symbiote that hasn't left yet, and you're in there with Martin Lee, who's trying to destroy it.
Gotcha.
And it was really cool, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. Anti-Venom is an interesting one that I definitely think there's a lot more room for them to be explored. But one of the unique things about the Anti-Venom is it not being sentient, but that also gives it less storytelling ability.
Yeah. I get
So
you.
there we have it. That is the Anti-Venom symbiote.
Very cool.
Are you ready for what is going to be 3 very long segments?
It is. Are you ready to get into talking about what is now the most gruesome show in Marvel?
Loki episode 4.
Top 2 deaths in one episode?
Wow.
Of just MCU,
wow.
I feel.
Yeah.
Like, 1 for shock factor, 2 for just, like, visual factor as well.
Yeah. So, we had a couple of parallel stories in this episode.
Yeah.
So we had Miss Minutes and Ravonna.
Yeah. Oh my god, you
We'll
made
say
me.
Ravonna. They were Miss Minutes had showed her the citadel at the end of time.
Yeah.
Where He Who Remains was dead. She then showed her a memory from before she had her mind wiped of how she had been instrumental in winning the Time War.
Yeah.
And then he had wiped her mind so that she could just run the TVA for him while he sat in his ivory tower, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then we also had Victor Timely arriving at the TVA,
Yeah.
unsure of what was going on. And we always knew these things were going to come to a head eventually. My gosh, did they not waste time though?
Yeah. They're, like, they really haven't let off the gas. And that's a good, like, we've said, like, pretty much every week, we're worried that while, yes, at the moment, the pacing's feeling great, they're not letting off the gas. Like, there's all these things that are keeping them to have to keep the pace going. We were worried at some point something was going to, like, we're waiting for their mess up, really.
Yeah.
But, like, no.
And right now, we're in a good spot. They can absolutely leave themselves in a hole at the end of episode 5, though.
Yeah.
They've got 2 episodes to explain what happens after what we've seen at the end of episode 4. And they can do that in 2 episodes. But if they try and spin off too much stuff in this episode, they're not going to have enough time to close it up nicely. And we might be back to square one of you've done your pacing well and then fucked it.
I mean, let's just we'll get into everything, but let's just talk the ending. What I was thinking was going to be the end of episode 6, where it all goes wrong, the loom explodes, and that's that, and that's where we're ended. We got it in episode 4, which I honestly wasn't expecting.
So the common consensus on the internet seems to be that the loop exploding probably means the loop has reset.
Possibly.
So does that restore the sacred timeline? Or does it restore the first stable timeline it can find?
See, I have a different theory on what's going to happen.
Okay.
My thought isn't that it's like it's essentially the loop resetting, but I don't think it now becomes like a singular timeline becomes the main. I think what we were seeing is all these timeline branches forced into one single, like, straight path forward. And I know this isn't like MCU canon, but the Spider-Verse is all a web. And everything is connected in different ways. What if the actual way the timelines all ever were was all just a mess, jumbled, going all over the place? The loom was them forcing it into a thing. It exploding just sets things back to the natural course, which is all these timelines just weave in and out. It's all just like a general mess. And some timelines come back, some maybe are lost through incursions and different things. But I mean, I think the TVA is going to be gone, and the only way is that the TVA has to be built again, or maybe it gets saved. Maybe there's some more timeline, like time travel shittery. But
The bit that's confusing me most
mm,
is the way that the TVA sits outside of time.
yeah,
Makes what Loki was doing with the time slipping backwards and forwards in the timeline of the TVA a bit confusing. And it might just be a storytelling purpose that we're not supposed to look into too much. But that also means that somehow the TVA is directly connected to the loop, even if it sits outside it.
yeah.
So I do just wonder, are we just gonna is the TVA just being reset?
Maybe.
So it's gonna come back to like a brand new, freshly built TVA, and they're gonna be a bit like, what happened? I'm genuinely curious to see like the direct aftermath of that explosion.
So have you seen the trailer for the final 2 episodes?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either, other than a singular clip, which unfortunately I just stumbled upon, and I immediately swiped away before like realizing what it was, because I didn't want spoilers. I enjoy not having the trailers because it spoils potential.
Episode trailers were a really weird thing to me.
And the only thing I saw was Loki time slipping.
Oh.
And I have no context and what looked like around him things falling apart, which makes me believe
We're gonna get like a Groundhog Day episode.
I don't know, maybe, but I have a feel like I saw that, and obviously I've been thinking about it now, and discussing this has made me realize, with the loom broken, their fix for grounding him again potentially is gone. We thought it was very weird that they fixed it so easily.
Yeah.
And that it might come back again. What if it is broken and he time slips, and like you say, we have a Groundhog Day again where he's got to repeat, and maybe he goes back to the meltdown beginning, and it's like he stops Victor Timely going, and we don't get that brutal death. That, I'm sorry, but can we talk about how fucking gruesome it was that we saw his
so awesome
rib cage and skull jaw, like Marvel not holding back.
Yeah.
Also,
spring cheese looking head ass.
I was not expecting that. Like, the door opens and it's just like whap.
Unfortunately, Twitter spoiled that for me.
Oh,
but fucking awesome.
Honestly, it's like this build up, and yeah, maybe he goes back and he stops that and it changes the course of things, because I saw one thing which was the theory is that Miss Minutes set him up to do that because he wasn't becoming the he who remains they wanted.
Yeah.
She makes a comment as she's being shut down. She is like, I have one more thing to say, and then it glitches and she's got like the one broken eye, and she's like, you will never be him. We know Victor Tamley is very much like wants to prove himself, like the Independent. He clearly is very much of, I can be the best. That comment then makes him want to be the one to fix it, and she knows that it would destroy him. Like, maybe I thought the way Miss
now
Minutes
that you
got
said the
shut
time
down.
slipping is back, I can see them doing a Groundhog Day episode.
I also could see something like that,
and it would make sense. And it might leave us in a position where one episode at the end works.
Maybe.
Now, there is a thing that I think a lot of people slipped over because it was disguised as a funny moment and then doesn't have as much physical weight, that I think is very important.
Okay.
When Victor Timely met OB.
Yes.
And we get a couple of jokes.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, it's like a snake eating its own tail, which is of course like the imagery of Ouroboros, which is his name, and it's very, very funny.
Yeah.
And he gets turned into a bit of a joke because they're both like fangirling over each other and whatever. But there was a very valid point raised, which we need to discuss. Because they were like, okay, so who originally wrote this? So this is, I can't remember what it's officially known as, but it's known as a Mozart paradox to me because of Doctor Who.
Okay.
And Peter Capaldi's Doctor does a whole segment talking about it, which is so interesting. And basically, I'll explain the story as he tells it.
Mm-hmm.
So, a young boy loves Mozart's music.
Yep.
Adores it. It's his favorite music in the whole world. He has all of the sheet music. He spent his life earning loads of money to buy original copies of this sheet music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then he discovers time travel.
Okay.
So he goes back in time
mm-hmm.
to meet Mozart to get him to sign his sheet music.
Got you.
But he can't find Mozart. No one's heard of Mozart. Where is Mozart? Distraught at the idea that Mozart doesn't exist for whatever reason, and no one can find him, he writes down the sheet music so that Mozart's music can live on, so that he doesn't have to live in a world without Mozart's music, making him Mozart.
Yep.
But who wrote the original sheet music?
Got you.
So that's the concept of the paradox. Yes, we know how it's got here, but that's an infinite loop that's always going to happen. What started it?
So I have a.
What if that feeds into the Groundhog Day we might experience in the next episode, and the TVA gets reset at the end of the series, and Loki is left behind the information that OB wrote, that Kang learnt from, that OB learnt from, that Kang learnt from, etc., etc.
So I have my theory. We know that Victor Timely was a character on the Sacred Timeline.
Yep.
He was a kid. Him getting the TVA guidebook branches him off. There is the potential that there is several times he branches off, whether he gets a TVA handbook at a different point in time, lots of things that could branch him off to become Victor Timely. While on what they discussed, it's like OB learns from an inventor called Victor Timely. Victor Timely learns from. It's not necessarily the exact same Victor Timely each time. So in theory, it's not really the loop. It's more OB stays the same. And each time he's getting a new Victor Timely to bounce and learn something slightly different off. And Victor Timely teaches OB something slightly new.
Oh, so you think it's
so it's
forged in fire kind of, every time this loop gets reset and Victor Timely gets triggered, they learn a little bit more and it builds up over tens of thousands of cycles.
I feel like maybe OB's the central thing and he's just interacted with 100 Victor Timelies over the years. And all that information, each time they've built the TVA together, OB's kept all this information, which is why he's always written the handbook, because he's the central knowledge of it.
I get that, but did we not come to the conclusion that OB couldn't have had his mind wiped?
Well,
it depends. He didn't recognize the person other than as a picture.
Well,
in his
we
book.
thought he had, hasn't had his mind wiped, but maybe he hasn't. Maybe his mind, because you've got to think he who remains wiped everyone's memory. Doesn't, and we presumed OB didn't because he got forgotten.
Well, he kind of had his mind wiped because he remembers the discussion with Loki.
Yes.
And everyone had their mind wiped in between the path Loki was skipping to.
But I think it's a situation of OB's been there for as the central person without his mind wiped. If you think he's been there for who fucking knows, however, 1,000, hasn't aged, they don't age there or something. It's that's years of knowledge. We know that from his experience with Loki, he was forgetting what Loki had told him till Mobius prompted him. And he's oh wait, no, I do remember that. Maybe it's a situation he was oh, I remember I built this with an inventor called Victor Timely. it's only then Victor Timely going, "That's me," prompts this, "Wait, that is you," and brings
I
those
don't
memories
know.
back, maybe?
I lean more into the idea that he's called Ouroboros because he is a paradox. He is
Mm,
a living, breathing paradox, and
yeah.
like that's why the TVA actually works. It runs on paradoxes.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm really curious, and I think that little interaction where they're like, well, so who really wrote the information
Mm,
then? I think that's going to end up being like a plot point at the end. And I think it's actually going to be Loki ends up leaving the book behind, which won't fix the paradox because it'll be like, well, Loki doesn't know that stuff. So where did it come for before Loki? But that's going to be how they have the information in a new loop.
maybe.
But it's such an interesting situation to be in. I don't think anyone expected Victor to die in such a way
Yeah.
and then the loop to get reset.
Well, yeah,
And that's crazy because we've not even discussed what Ravonna and Miss Minutes were getting onto.
well, yeah, there was, and like, I just wanted to point out, I called the whole deal with Miss Minutes was just restarting her.
Yeah,
I
you
said they just
absolutely did.
maybe they could just like reboot
Just turn
her,
her off and on again. Yeah,
and that's literally what they had to do. That shutdown was very cool in the visuals of how they did it. Like her kind of reverting to like a super simple like ASCII style clock,
yeah,
and then like the zeros and ones like binary as she's being shut down. Also, Miss Minutes is the evilest fucking character. Her
100%.
watching the cube crush
That
those like,
smile was sickening.
yes. Which also was another death that we didn't visually see, but it was bad enough not having to see, like, you could, the sounds they did with that, with the cube killing off the
Yeah.
rebels, we'll call them.
So you had Ravonna and Miss Minutes convince themselves they don't need He Who Remains.
Yeah,
They don't need Kang at all. They can do it because Ravonna basically did it last time.
yeah.
So Miss Minutes once
Which
again is just trying to hitch her wagon to the most powerful person.
she's just manipulating things, which I actually think
100%.
is her playing things to try and get a better Kang back.
100%. Um, and the idea is they're going to build an army to win against whoever comes for our universe, our
Yeah,
timeline, and then they will re-establish the TVA in their image and do what He Who Remains was doing. But it'll
yeah.
be them this time, so it's okay. Um, so the first thing they do is naturally go to the prison cell that has the people who pruned all them
Mhm.
branches and are sacred timeline till we die heretic people. And they're like, do you want to join our army? Unfortunately for them, they turned up just after B-15 had gone in
Yeah,
and explained why they should help the new TVA.
yeah.
And they'd started to kind of come round to the idea.
Basically made them realize that your whole thing is you care about protecting the TVA. If you actually give a shit about protecting the TVA, you will help us to keep the TVA alive. And it's
Yeah,
like Miss Minutes and Ravonna just too late, where that kind of had already swayed in that way.
yeah. Um,
So
so you get the one guy who'd made a life for himself on the
B5,
sacred timeline, decide that he would stand with Ravonna, and the rest were like, no, fuck you.
what a
So
little
then the
shit.
cube we got teased in episode 2,
2 or 3, yeah.
um, that was kind of creepy and scary, and they make it smaller. Then had like 15 prisoners put in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most harrowing part of that is the fact it cuts away from it.
Yes. It doesn't show us, but you
Yeah,
hear
all
it.
you see is you see Ravonna and Miss Minutes, and you just hear the crunching and the screaming, but
The
like these muffled screams
squelch.
because of how, yeah, gross.
Yeah.
And then you just see Ravonna kind of a bit steely faced and a little bit like, oh, that's a bit grim.
Yeah.
You got B5, no, sorry,
Who
X5,
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 who can't
who's like,
look. Well,
yeah,
he just
and
won't look.
then you got Miss Minutes fucking, hey, this is
Yeah.
good,
Yeah, like
fucking psychotic ass clock.
honestly. And something else, like we watched X5 in it, and it's like it was bad enough watching, like, imagine being squished by a cube. Don't forget, he was just had the cube squishing him. Imagine those like 20 people, you are being squished against someone else.
Yeah.
And it's
And
just
the bones won't crush straight away. They'll protrude
snap.
and then crush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
horrific.
Horrific.
I would kind of like to see a rated R version and see how they animate what was actually happening in the box.
I think it'd just become like, it'd just be red.
I'm a red pile of goop.
Well, it'd just be like a red mist on it all, and then it would just, I presume, I don't know if liquid stays in it. Like, can it hold liquid? Does it all just start dripping out the bottom?
If you put enough pressure on liquid, it'll become a gas. No,
I don't know.
maybe. Who
But
knows?
yeah, then you get X5, obviously, on the. Well, oh no, he's watching over. He goes to get Victor.
Yeah. They kidnap Victor when he goes to see the hot cocoa machine.
Yeah. The obsession over a machine that makes hot cocoa.
Yeah. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Hot chocolate is lit.
I just like the fact that the TVA is sustained on just hot cocoa and key lime pie.
Yeah. That key lime pie still looks really good. Like,
yeah.
The real big thing as well, though, is with the timeline blowing up, is Ravonna still going to be like pruned? Because previously, like we found out when you prune someone, they were going to that place at the end of time.
Well, that's the thing. Ravonna gets sent there,
which is outside the timeline.
Yeah.
So is she going to find a big red button
how
to reset everything?
Well, she knows. I wonder if she just makes her way to his lighthouse thing.
Yeah.
Because she knows the creature thing that's there, because I imagine she put it there with He Who Remains to protect that place. Don't know. Maybe not. But I imagine she knows how to get back up to the. So I think she maybe ends up there, whether she's trapped there. Maybe she's just trapped there now.
Yeah.
Miss Minutes obviously gets reset.
I do wonder if Ravonna potentially has to reset the timeline because she's now outside of the loop. Maybe she can hit a big red reset button.
Maybe.
I won't be surprised if we potentially get maybe like a story of Loki doing a Groundhog Day and a B story of Ravonna trying to work out if there's any way she can reset the timeline.
Possibly. There is also like the thing we haven't talked about, which is from episode 1 when we saw Loki running through and he gets pruned. And we're like, oh shit, someone pruned him and that saved the situation. I don't know why I didn't expect it to just be Loki. Like, when I realized, they were very smart with it. So everything's melting down. And then when it cuts to like the next scene, he's holding the time. And I was like, hang on, this is cut back to Loki from episode 1. And then I'm like, oh shit. So it is
the same meltdown when he slipped to the future. Yeah.
I was like, okay, so it was this meltdown, not like a different one. So I was like, okay, Loki's gonna prune himself. He's gonna like with a 1. I'd forgot about the phone ringing and stuff. And obviously Sylvie being there, I was like, oh, this all makes sense now, why she was there and why he was so like the phone call of it being Obi, and he's just like, hey, you okay? He's like, what? Like, he's like, well, you're taking your time. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm trying. And then they both want him to turn off the powers. I enjoyed X5 being like Sylvie.
Yeah.
Because he got mind controlled.
There was a lot to digest, and I'm genuinely curious to see how a lot of it shakes out and if they can competently deal with it in 2 episodes. I definitely see a world where they can, but I'm not confident they do.
I am still of the opinion, I think the TVA gets destroyed. And I don't think I think the reset gets broken and the TVA doesn't get reset, sort of thing. I think the loop gets broken.
I am inclined to disagree with you, but not from anything we've seen in Loki, but rather the leaks that are coming out on the timeline, which we'll discuss in the news segment.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's one of them times where I'd probably completely agree with you, if not for stuff getting leaked on the timeline about overarching rumors and plans.
Yeah. I just, I wonder if it then opens things up to be
Quite possibly. And if Loki wasn't mind-blowing enough for you...
Yeah.
Gen V episode 7. Gen V continues to not miss.
Honestly, for a show that is essentially a spin-off, it's very much like the boys could have not existed, and this coming out, I would have been like, holy shit, this is like the next big like super. This is so good.
100%.
So much happened.
Bearing in mind how far in advance these shows are written and done, there was a number of bits that have a interesting timing to real world events. Yeah. So a lot of the episode hinges around Victoria Newman, who we know from The Boys is a soup and was raised by Giancarlo Esposito. Oh, sorry, his character.
Yeah.
And she's coming to the campus, and obviously her whole thing is she's like an anti-soup politician. But in reality, she doesn't believe in taking away people's soup. She just wants soup control.
Yeah. Just like her dad.
Yeah.
Or stepdad.
Which is really interesting. And basically, they realize they need to get evidence to someone who can cause chaos, but a black girl and a bi-gender Asian are not the people to break that news because no one will care. They need to get someone with power and influence.
Strangely realistic.
Yeah. But we also find out the Dean's motivation for... So did you twig straight away when they got into her office what had happened?
Oh, as soon as they started looking through that folder, I was like, I realized what this is.
I didn't realize if it was going to be so fresh for you, like it slipped your mind, or if it was so fresh you like get it.
Yeah.
So, season 1 of The Boys, episode 1 potentially.
No, I don't think it's episode.
Is it episode 2?
It might be
right near the very beginning.
It either was right at the end of episode 1 or it was episode 2. I forget.
Homelander goes up to save a plane. He realizes he can't save it, so they have to let the plane crash.
Yeah.
And instead of accepting that the superheroes can't save the day, it got turned into a...
The government didn't let them.
Yeah, it was a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
There was nothing anyone could do.
If the government allowed soups to help, we could have been here sooner and saved it, sort of thing.
And the information of Homelander threatened these people, refused to save anyone, and just left all of them... Because him and Maeve could have got a couple of people out.
Yep.
And instead they decided to let everyone die so that no one knew what had happened.
Yep.
And we find out that Dean Shetty's husband and child were on that flight.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because at the end of last week's episode, she talks about, like, can you make the virus contagious?
Yeah.
And we're like, what is her plan here? What are Vought planning?
I said, I don't think this is Vaught's plan. I think she just wants all soups gone. And I didn't think, like, have an idea of her motivation. I just thought she's ended up in this place of, like, controlling these superhero kids. Maybe she just hates them.
Yeah.
Or scared of them. Yeah.
So we get to see a contagious version of the virus in action, and my god, is it terrifying!
Yeah, it was gross,
brutal. Yeah,
and but then he's like, "Oh, it's only bodily fluids." To which she goes, "We'll make it airborne." And at that point, the doctor's like, "Hang on a second. This feels like even for Vought, this is a bit much." And then she's like, "Forget about Vought," and then threatens him. So
she then explains that she's got him over a barrel, and if he wants any chance of getting out alive, he should listen to her.
Yeah, otherwise he will be thrown to the dogs as the person that's created a virus to kill soups.
Exactly. So we were slightly wrong about who Maria's mysterious backer was.
Yes.
But we weren't far off.
We weren't. I'd taken a guess that it was maybe Carlos Esposito.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito's character.
Because he'd like lost control, didn't have someone in his corner anymore. Maybe he was.
Yeah.
But oh my god, I did not think like so looking back now, it's fucking obvious because with everything we know about the head popper, and then you look back to Marie and when she popped the guy's dick, it's the exact same thing.
Do you know what they did? They did just enough to keep them separate.
And
in a world where like you have a lot of similar superpowers, but no one really has the same superpowers, there's just enough there for you to go, not relevant. And then when it becomes obvious, you're like, oh my god, it was so obvious.
Yes.
The big thing that I think helped their situation was the creative decision in The Boys to have her eyes glaze over when she pops heads. Which, of course, we've never seen Marie do. We've never seen her eyes glaze over to use her powers. So it just shows like how much more effort it takes.
But then that's the thing, is like when she cuts her hand and does that, her eyes don't glaze. So it's just like, it's also the thing of, we never saw what any of her other power, like we didn't know she could do anything other than head pop. So it's like,
that's just like, I learned one move, why do I need to learn a second?
Well, yeah, she's learned a move that doesn't show off her powers. She can do it secretly, and it's like,
yeah, in reality, the big giveaway should have been the dick exploding.
Yeah, but that reveal that she's there, and then we find out that like she discovered her, and that their powers are very rare. Then kind of opens up the thing of, there's obviously only so many sets of like powers.
Yeah.
Because it is a chemically like created thing. There's only obviously so many combinations. Also seems like I'm also realizing a lot of it must also come down to your genetics, because I forgot what the young lad's name who can bend metal and stuff.
Polaris' son.
Yeah. But Polaris and his son both have very similar powers, so obviously it's something to do with your genetics also influence it. There's like repeats.
Oh, see, this is the bit I'm not sure about, because we know that Homelander's son has similar powers to Homelander, but he never had any compound V.
True.
So I do wonder if maybe he doesn't have any compound V in him, and just his dad being a soup gave him powers.
I suppose it depends.
Or like you say, he got given compound V, and because of their genetics being so similar, he got the same powers.
Potentially.
Kate's descent into madness is getting very scary.
Yeah. Also, before we move off the virus, the doctor and that, obviously they reveal the information to her. Immediately, the way that she reacted, I was like, shit, this wasn't a good idea.
No, this was a bad idea.
This hasn't gone to the right person. Because obviously they're clueless to the fact that she's essentially Vought influenced.
Yeah.
Whether she wants to admit that or not, she does everything to protect Vought. It's instilled in her. So her getting the virus and then handing the guy the white plain business card, and he's like, there's nothing on this, and then drop of blood. It's like, oh, well, you're dead, mate. It's like such a calling. It's almost like a calling card thing that she can do now.
The bit that makes me laugh was him going, it must be kind of dry.
Yeah.
She was like, I must be kind of dry in here. That's why my nose is bleeding.
And then she just
I'm someone who suffers with nosebleeds a lot. I'm glad it's not nosebleed season for me, because after seeing that, my nose starts to bleed. I'd probably shit my pants. I'd be like,
it's real. Compound V is real. Yeah. But
it's the way she just so nonchalantly like flicks a bit of his fucking brain off of her hand.
Before the Dean dies, we get into that stuff. She goes to Butcher's old friend.
Yes.
I forget her name now that she goes by.
The FBI lady, even though I'm not sure if she's actually FBI.
Thinking she would help and would be into the idea of destroying all soups. There's the question arisen of who was on the phone that she was talking to. I had a theory.
Butcher.
Well, I had the theory last week, didn't I? I said where maybe Butcher goes after the Dean because she's going too bad the other way, and maybe Butcher becomes this like strange middleman that gets rid of evil soups but gets rid of crazy people as well.
It feels kind of obvious, but no one's discussing it. How confident are we that this virus won't hurt other humans?
Well, we're not. Like,
They say it latches onto Compound V, but is there any danger of another genetic mutation that's like prevalent in humans? And like viruses can
mutate.
mutate.
Let's be simple here. All viruses mutate over time.
What stops this thing from mutating and just killing everyone?
Exactly. Also, for people like Butcher who've taken Temp V, like, sure, he might not have powers after 24 hours, but how do we know V's not somewhat in his bloodstream? Suddenly, if loads of people are taking Temp V, they're in danger. It makes sense, I think, that Butcher's on the phone because she makes a dig about Butcher without saying his name. There's this guy that Hippie Game Obsessed would definitely make that while he's listening, just to make a point. And then also having Butcher be the person that's going to watch it, like keep an eye on the Dean, and if anything goes wrong.
I could also see it being because he's a lot more respectful of doing stuff the right way.
Yeah, that's true.
He wants to stop soups, but he doesn't want to kill all soups. He doesn't want to commit a genocide of the soups.
Yeah, that's also true.
He just wants like an easier way to deal with the villains and the bad ones. But yeah, it's chaos. And like also when Newman's doing a talking on stage and you get like kind of like Soup Lives Matter rally and they're all like,
well, it's chaos. It's got people saying Soups Lives Matter. Also, Sam, you've been locked up for like all your life. How have you got in with the wrong crowd immediately?
Well, but you know what? It's actually kind of an interesting critique. It's kind of like you put someone in a little box because of something they can't control.
Yeah.
You abuse them and treat them like shit, and then you introduce them to someone who's like, no, you're important. You're better than other people. Of course they're going to want to hear that. They're going to eat that shit up.
Yeah. And also being told you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Like, they're absolutely going to eat that shit up. But also look at the people who were like taking him to that rally. The girl
Rufus.
who he first met was like, oh, we've got powers, we can do whatever the fuck we want. And then you've got Rufus, who we know is a walking piece of garbage. Yeah. And like the red Soup Lives Matters hat. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Homelander was right. Like, if people don't get that the joke's about them, like, is the satire in the room with us?
Yeah, there's definitely some people that all went over their heads.
Yeah, and like even like your Tucker Carlson looking head ass who was doing the interview and that.
Yeah, who's just doing it for the attention and the drama because he knows it's
libtard
views.
over here, and like everyone starts shouting abuse at her because she's being like generally pretty mid, and he's just like, and as you can see, she can't handle the heat. It's like, well, no. As far as you know, she has no superpowers, and a fucking superpower person's just stood up and flashed her like laser beam eyes at her. Like, what do you want her to do?
What's wild is she could probably just make all of their heads pop, and they don't know that.
It's the craziest thing. I'm so curious to see. Like, would we say that Marie and Victoria are the two most powerful soups we've seen?
I think possibly.
I can't think of anyone else we've seen that's as dangerous as them.
I think the only thing that is letting them down is obviously Homelander. Like if Marie, if they're not focused on attacking everybody, like Homelander could laser Marie and she's dead before she does anything. But if they were on a rampage, like, yeah, they're just gonna pop, 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 everyone's dead. Like,
and like, here's the thing: they don't even need to like be quick enough to blow up Homelander's head. Sorry, they could just like blow up his eyes.
Well, yeah, there's a lot
but like, I'm just thinking about the ability of blood powers here. You don't even need to be in the room to kill this person. Surely, with like what we understand of their powers and what we've seen, surely they could just create a blood clot. that might
Yeah, they could.
so like we've heard that a brain aneurysm or like a blood clot in the brain is a ticking time bomb.
Well, yeah,
What's to stop them sitting down having a meeting, causing one of them in their head, and then walking away and then just waiting? They're like, I don't need you to die like right now. You can die in 6 weeks, 10
yeah.
weeks.
Oh yeah, they're the ultimate like secret agent
Yeah, they
because
are assassin material.
they don't have to put themselves in danger in an actual fight. They can essentially secretly kill everyone untraceably.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're wild. But you know what's scarier? Someone who can control people having a psychotic break. Kate has gone off the deep end.
Yes.
I was very much of the attitude of Kate's no worse than everyone else. Everyone's done bad things and been put in tough situations. It's not her fault that she got manipulated when she came from an abused childhood. Then she kind of went a bit far.
But I mean, I think it's just
I don't blame her
from that abuse.
Yeah. I don't blame her, but she has kind of gone past that point now of like, okay, you may have gone too far. But
I come from a position where both my parents work in the mental health industry, and they have done for my life. So like you learn a lot of stuff
yeah,
while they're doing table discussions all from one industry. And it's really interesting to see her after she stops taking her medication and the way she talks about her medication. Because it's interesting. 'Cause, on one end, you're like, yeah, they were drugging her to keep her under control.
yeah.
But she has no ability to control the voices she hears, it seems, which
Well,
would drive someone insane.
yeah,
Like when she's not medicated, she hears all the voices and doesn't seem like she has any ability to control them. Now, if they'd have helped her from an earlier age, maybe they could have taught her to control them. But she's too far gone now. So it's kind of like she should have just had access to the medication without the blackmail that comes with it.
yes.
But now
Oh,
she views the medication as this evil thing that's being used to control her, when clearly it actually helps her keep her head on straight. Because like everyone's always said, like, "Oh, what superpower do you want?" And no one ever goes mind reading because every human knows the temptation of mind reading is too much. It's not good for you. Don't do it. Um, and yeah, it's fully a psychotic break. She can hear everyone's thought about her constantly. There's nothing she can do to stop it. And like, imagine someone's lying to your face. You wouldn't normally know that, and all you can
well,
hear is them laughing about how they're lying to your face.
and then the flip side of like, she's asking her who people that were her friends like, you don't trust me, do you? And they're going, well, you can read my mind, so you know I don't. Like they don't even hide the fact that or don't understand that she can hear. Like they know she's hearing their thoughts uncontrollably, so they're just being like, well, we don't trust her. Like they're kind of throwing it in her face more. So then that's like, she knows her friends aren't even trying to be like
Yeah,
nice anymore.
100%.
I
It's
I wasn't expecting her to go like full. I was expecting, well, she can make the dean kind of just come clean, and then it's like, I forget what she uses, some keyword, and then the dean just slits her throat, and then she stops
I
Marie.
think the most I think the most brutal part of that was as Marie goes to help her. So I'm like, oh, Marie's got a bit of control over her. We've seen Marie save someone from like a stab
Yes,
to the throat. Marie's got this, it's fine. And then as Marie goes forward, she just touches her hand and goes, don't save her.
which is even worse because it's like she's fully conscious, but she can't like go past the fact of like she can't
Yeah.
save it, but she all she can do is watch.
It's like her powers are on lockdown
And even
until
Kate's like, I'm sorry you're having to relive this, because she knows, she can see in her head that she's reliving her
yeah.
and it's like,
Because she can hear everyone's thoughts, all she's hearing in Marie's mind
probably as a screaming
is
mom or something.
is that memory of what
Yeah,
happened to her as a child. Um it's a fucking brutal episode, man.
yeah.
I'm really worried about Sam. We do not need Sam turning into a mini Homelander.
No, I really hope Emma can keep him kind of close and under control in a sense. Not in the sense of like trying to control him, but keep him grounded.
I've got a horrible feeling Marie's gonna have to head pop him. And I'm talking like, I'm saying have to in like a life or death, like he's trying to choke her out, and she pops his head.
I think there's going to be a situation he loses his shit, and Emma tries to stop him again, and he doesn't calm down. But Emma's like, doesn't want to give up trying to calm him down, and Marie's like, he's going to kill Emma or something. So then she has to.
I can genuinely see everyone other than Marie dying.
So
I don't think all of them will, but I can see a situation in which everyone other than Marie dies.
Yeah, I also thought it was very interesting that the mayor lady was like, you have two options. You get in line and act like a hero to everyone and do as you should, or you can go ahead and like whistle blow, but you're gonna ruin it. Like, no, like you're gonna get yourself killed because they'll come after you.
So Newman's a really interesting character because she clearly does want to do a bit of good, but it's
she understands the system.
Yeah, there's a really good story to be told that has been told a number of different ways and a number of different times. Of if you are in a disadvantaged position, if you're a minority or someone who's historically oppressed, how high up or how much shit do you have to take to get to a point where you can make change? And what a lot of people have done in the past is they've kept their mouth shut, they've taken the shit, and they get such high point in power that the world below them is completely different, and they don't actually know what changes need to be made anymore. And instead of making little changes where they could and not getting as high, they've got higher and done nothing to help, making them part of the problem potentially. Yep. And I think Newman is actually on that scale. Yes, she's done some evil shit. Let's not skate over that. Yeah. But I do think inherently she wants to try and do some good.
Yeah.
But is she trying to get to too high a position of power to actually be able to do good?
Yeah, she's too lost in the source.
Yeah, she's saying to Marie, let these kids die, let this virus happen, who gives a fuck? Be the first black girl in the 7, and then me and you as best buddies can change the world.
Which to me is just like, she's now just trying to manipulate her for her own gain.
Exactly.
She's just trying to plant someone she has control over in the 7, so then she gets control over the 7 again.
Well, yeah, she was trying to be friendly with Homelander, and that all kind of went to shit. So
yeah.
I
saw an interesting theory.
Go on.
The Dean says, right before all the shit happens with Kate, there's one thing she needs to do, then they can get out of here. They can escape. What if everything we saw happen was a fake memory? We've seen Kate put everyone to like sleep and put them in a memory.
What if it's the same thing?
What if the Dean did that to fake her own death so she can hide from Vought as this virus has got like it's messed up? She's gonna have to escape, otherwise Vaught's gonna come after her or something.
Interesting.
What if she now essentially the last thing Kate had to do was so that everyone thinks she's dead, she can just slip away and she's not actually gone.
It's interesting. I wouldn't put it past the boys, but I think it undermines the hit of that moment where everyone's like, "Oh my god, you've killed her! Don't let her die." Another really interesting thing: has Polaris been infected?
I don't think so.
Or is he just having seizures as a result of the V in his system and how old he is now?
I think he's having a seizure, sort of the same way A-Train started having heart attacks from running. I think Polaris was having a seizure of some sort.
From using like the higher quality V booster, the V steroids.
Or like just hit something in his system, like he just started having seizures, and because he has powers, like it creates this catastrophic effect.
That scene of him in the ambulance having the seizure,
yeah,
and he's got his son trying to like stop the ambulance from crushing all of them was wild.
Yes, it really was. Also, like a wild thought that like even the good soups who, well, yes, are conforming to don't shush, don't say anything, but they're not like Homelander level bad.
They're complicit in the sense of staying quiet and not saying anything versus your Homelander, your
Who do their own
Stormfront, who
shit.
are just
But like when they lose control, like they're just as dangerous as like
imagine Marie has a seizure like that.
just everyone just boom blown up.
Like, what'd you do? Did you give her seizure, like something to induce a seizure and drop her into a war zone? Just let her kill all the enemy combatants?
It's wild. Also, Polaris' son not being at the Dean's house adds an element of, does he freak out and say she fucked up? Or like something else there? Also plays into that theory I saw about the Dean's fake to death. He'd be like, where's the Dean gone? They're all like, she died. And he's like, no, I've just seen her. Or something. It could be interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely some big twists and turns coming.
Oh yeah, there's more twists and more manipulation.
And because we know that this leads directly into the next season of The Boys, which leads directly into the next season of Gen V, they're gonna leave us on a massive cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm genuinely concerned that we're gonna lose some people. The only people I'm like desperate to not die are Emma, Jordan, and Marie. Everyone else I could make my peace with, but them three characters I've grown really fond of.
Yeah.
And it would genuinely be like, that really fucking sucks if any of them got killed.
Now, there was. Do you remember when Polaris' son went to see Rufus and he shut the shutters and shut the door?
Mm-hmm.
That obviously means the school can go into lockdown. I feel like they wouldn't have shown us that if that didn't, like a Chekhov's gun.
Gun.
I think the school at some point, and there's something's going to go down that the school goes in lockdown, and I think that's, like you say, where some people are going to die.
I enjoyed the revelation that I think we'd kind of pieced together, but didn't know it to this extent, that Godolkin was purely put in place to monitor suits as they develop and think of ways to stop them. I think we worked out that like that facility being there was kind of for that purpose. I don't think we realized the entire university was also used for that. The forest is just there for more extreme stuff, but the entire university is just there to monitor and understand soups.
Yeah, we kind of like I feel like we've taken it as the school was Vought, but early days, trying to instill that level of like everything's media controlled, everything is like put on a front, pretend to be a superhero, but behind closed doors you can do what you want. Like it was kind of like building that precedent. It wasn't. I don't think we'd realized that it was just all the front to actually just learn as much as they fucking can about what they've created.
It is the palatable bit of the forest and then the disgusting bit of the forest. There is no difference.
Yeah.
But crazy.
Yeah, only a couple more episodes of that.
Last week's the last episode, Gen V.
Sorry, yes, one more episode.
And then that'll be wrapped up, and then nothing more from the Boys universe until the Boys season 4.
Oh, it's gonna be a long wait.
Yeah, it's gonna suck, but it's fine because Prime are not leaving us short-handed with the superhero content.
No, they're not.
Because Invincible season 2 is gonna be here.
It is.
I'm so fucking ready. We've waited like 2.5 years for this.
You say we?
Yeah, well,
I've waited 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
It's been like a month. It's been like a month for me, probably.
They have basically promised that we're never ever going to wait this long again for a new season of Invincible, which is always nice.
Yeah, and it's usually the case. Like the second season takes a while, but then at that point they do multiple in a row.
Yeah. A lot of people who got like early access to a number of episodes to do their reviews have left very favorable reviews. One thing I have noticed that seems to be pretty consistent is that trailer we got.
Yeah.
Seems to only really talk about the first 2 or 3 episodes potentially.
Which doesn't surprise me that they want to keep things hidden.
Yeah, but that means a fuck ton of stuff has to happen in them first 3 episodes.
Yeah, I mean...
like, a lot of stuff has to happen.
I wonder if it's not quite only. I bet there's a couple of things there that are from later on, but I think a lot's going to happen in these first two because they've got to set up the next like issue, right? Next bad,
Yeah.
essentially. This is also it's superheroes. It's like you've got to set up the next big bad.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I'm I can't wait. All I've heard is that the animation's even sleeker. The style is obviously still the same, but like it had more time to
Polished.
cook in the oven. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the story's really good. The voice acting is phenomenal. I'm just so ready to get back into this world and enjoy it again. Um,
I'm very much looking forward to it. I do
yeah,
think it's
next week's episode is going to be lit.
going to be
We're
good.
going to have Invincible, Gen V, Loki. We're going to be getting ready for the Marvels. Oh, I cannot wait.
It's going to be interesting as well to like see what gets set up in this first episode to try and start piecing together like, right, where's this going? What are we facing?
And this is part of the beauty of Invincible. The people who adore this show from season 1, like myself, if we really wanted to, all had time to read all of the Invincible comics.
Yeah.
But anyone who's done that, like even to the amount I've done that, knows that they're hitting all the major plot points, but they're doing it in a very different order.
Yeah.
And they're tweaking stuff. Which means you might think you know what's going to happen, but it doesn't mean you know how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. I've heard they're doing multiverse stuff this season, but apparently the way Invincible handled multiverse stuff is completely different and fucking awesome compared to every other multiverse story that's been told. So I'm excited to see how they do that.
Do you know why I'm worried? They're going to show us their version of multiverse, and we're going to be like, why couldn't Marvel do it this way?
Just going to ruin multiverse for us forever. It's absolute chaos. Just going to absolutely ruin multiversal stories for us for the rest of time.
It's going to be wild.
Make sure you watch Loki episode 5 before I'm Invincible, just in case.
Yeah, just in case it ruins the future of the MCU for us.
I've spent the best part of a year and a half trying to get you to watch Invincible.
You have.
And now I'm just here like we get to enjoy an entire season together.
Like, I mean,
I'm so fucking ready.
50% of this podcast is you've been trying to convince me to watch Invincible and The Boys, and I've finally done both. So
yeah,
I need to find something for you to watch now.
And there is increasing gravity behind the rumors that there is going to be a Spider-Man cameo in this season.
Oh, I saw that.
Yes. So, in the teaser trailer for season 2, we saw on Mark's phone the cover of the Spider-Man Invincible crossover issue.
Yes.
Then the voice actor of the Spectacular Spider-Man is in the credits for this show.
Okay.
And what people have also discovered since that is that Sony have a TV agreement with Amazon Studios. Yeah. Which means Amazon and Sony have a working relationship.
Interesting.
As well as the source material was already there. Just let us use it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And in a world where Spectacular Spider-Man was in Across the Spider-Verse, and Sony are working on the multiversal trilogy, and this season of Invincible focuses on the multiverse, and we see Mark maybe struggling a little bit with how to be a hero. If we get half an episode where he ends up in the Spectacular Spider-Man universe and Spider-Man teaches Mark what it means to be a hero, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
Oh, what if it's like however they do the multiversal travel, like he ends up in there and then he's like, like you say, teach him how to be a hero, and he's like, right, got to get you back. So he uses his device to actually send him back to his place. So you get this like,
do you know what I mean? Like there is options for them to do this where Sony are like, thank you, that helps us. Invincible, like, we got to have Spider-Man on our show.
Yeah.
Fans are there like, let's go. Like it is a win-win-win situation in a time where studios probably feel like everyone hates them. And we do, just so we're clear. No amount of Spider-Man is going to make me start rooting for studios, just so we're clear.
This is true.
But
exciting times.
there is a lot of evidence pointing towards that being very possible.
That could be very cool.
Should we get into the end of the Marvel Universe?
Is that what we're calling it? The collapse?
Well, ever since Endgame hit cinemas, people have been like, the downfall of Marvel is here. And I never bought into it. But these rumours do not make for pretty reading.
They don't.
So, Variety have written what I think can only be described as a hit piece.
Yeah, fair.
Because, my God, they are out for blood. We've got the cliff notes here of some of the big issues that cropped up with it, and it's just it screams of desperation and confusion and fear. It reads like DCEU 3 years ago.
Yeah, it gives the vibe of people in charge being like, oh my God, we've got this huge thing from it, like Endgame. Like everyone's loving Marvel, and then it starts to slip, and they go, oh, it's fine, we can catch this, and then they're not, and they go full panic mode, and it's starting to fall, and they just don't know how to stop it. So then
it does now feel like they're throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks.
Yes, it does, which is worrying.
So, Mahershala Ali was reportedly ready to leave the Blade project over the script. In some versions of the script, he'd reportedly been relegated to the 4th lead. Apparently, he's been convinced to stay on the project. They've brought the Logan writer, Michael Green, on to restart from scratch.
We talked about this a while back when the script first got scrapped, and we were like, we reckoned Kevin probably got it, was like, the fuck is this? Realized, okay, we need to start. Like, he'd passed it off and realized, no, this isn't good, we need to sort this. What I think now actually happened was script got written, Mahershala Ali was like, the fuck is this shit?
Yeah, not doing it.
Like, this isn't the Blade that I signed up for. Kevin gets wind of that and goes, Code Red mode, like, oh shit. And then obviously putting the Logan writer on, I think, is a smart play. Strong choice. And they've potentially saved that project, but I think this screams at the bigger issue of like, Kevin was in charge of everything pretty much up until Endgame. Like, he oversaw it all. And then obviously it was getting bigger, so he had to start, whether it was his choice, but I'm starting to think maybe Disney kind of pushed him that you need to hand some things off. And he started to, and it's just like the wrong people got in the wrong places.
I don't understand how you fuck this up so badly.
Because people like to make things more complicated than they need to be.
When Mahershala Ali got cast as Blade, basically the entire internet went, that is a phenomenal casting, this film cannot miss.
Everyone was like, we are getting Blade again, this is going to be sick.
Then they announced, we've got Deadpool, we're going to do Deadpool 3 still as an 18. So instantly what we've got is we've got Disney who want to get into these 18 rated films, and they've got Deadpool and Blade ready to go. 2 of the most iconic adult comic book characters.
Yep.
Locked and loaded, ready to go. We're like, this is going to be perfect. You just have Blade turn up, cut the fuck out of a load of vampires. It's not complicated.
The story is also there of like, we've had so many things over the last few years in Marvel of like the jokey mention of vampires. It's like the precedent's set that maybe vampires exist in the MCU. All you need to do is like, oh, Blade's been around and keeping them under control, and just have a film of him hunting vampires.
You can absolutely have him been Blade for 10, 15 years, And that's the reason, because also with everything else in the Avengers film getting such a high level, we know that street level crime fighting has gone to shit in like what we see. You could have had it so this story was centered around Blade coming back from the blip, seeing that the population of vampires has got a bit too brave because they're not scared of anyone anymore. And he's got to do some culling. He's got to stop the Lord of the Vampires, who's got a bit too powerful now. And he's just got to get that crowd under control. You don't have to make it more complicated than that, because guess what? It's going to be, you make it horror based, you make it a bit spooky and scary, you make it gory, and you just let him chop heads off vampires.
And then you've got Black Knight from the end of Eternals, that they just pull that in.
Yeah.
Things tied in, job's good un.
I especially when they did such a good job with Werewolf by Night.
Yeah. Do you know what this,
like?
It really does scream to me that like Kevin's hand was forced to pass things off and Disney put people in places. And obviously Kevin had last say, and all these things keep hitting Kevin's table, and he's like, what the fuck is going on?
It's either that or he's lost his touch and is out of touch. I don't know what it is.
I find
it's one of them two things.
Hard to believe. I think, as most things, execs put pressure on the creatives lose the control that they had, and then it goes to shit. Happens all the time. But it doesn't stop there.
No. Now, this is where it really starts to stink of desperation and panic.
Yes.
Marvel has apparently considered moving away from Kang due to the reception of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, as well as Major's off-screen issues. This potentially includes pivoting to Doctor Doom as the big bad of the multiverse saga. Now, what I will say is, I wasn't a million miles away from this idea, but I was going to bring
this up, that we discussed the idea a few times across different shows that come out, that there's a lot of weird little hints that maybe Doctor Doom exists and he's in the background doing shit.
Yeah, and the idea of Kang being this big scary guy, you get to Secret War, and about halfway through, Kang just gets dealt with instantly by Doom, and then you're like, surprise, Doom's the bad guy. That could have worked for Doom being a minor problem at the big end of Secret War that people barely survive, and then he's the main bad guy for the next saga. But them trying to make him just the big bad of the multiverse saga, there's not enough time. We don't even have a Fantastic Four cast yet.
Do you know? And do you know what's wild? Like, they say the reception of Ant-Man, but I would say no one after watching Ant-Man said that Kang was a bad villain. Everyone was like, Jonathan Majors is amazing as Kang. He's this big but the film itself was poor, and the visuals let it down, which we can get onto later. Yeah. But like, I don't feel like anyone had an issue with the character of Kang. He felt scary. He felt powerful. We got the setup of there's lots of them, so there's going to be an issue.
Yeah, Kang was not the problem with that film.
No. Obviously, like what you said, this came from them kind of around when Ant-Man flopped, and then obviously right after Ant-Man is when Jonathan Majors was arrested, and everyone obviously then said, are they going to recast him? What's going to happen? The future of MCU. Doesn't surprise me that they would then have to start thinking about, do we pivot off Kang? Like, different options.
It's crazy to me, though, that pivot was such a big discussion, because Kang is the most easily recastable character. His entire thing is there's a billion of him from across the multiverse. Up until that point, we'd seen 2 different versions.
Yeah, unless the only reason I can think they were so strong on pivot is if there's something in a contract that's like Jonathan Majors is cast as Kang, and it's like they can't.
I get that,
but I don't think there would be.
Rule, if they're gonna recast him because of off-screen behavior, that probably voids any protections he gets in the contract anyway. Because let's be clear here, Disney actors, which are what Marvel actors are, have clauses in their contract about the way they have to behave.
Oh yeah.
So even just being arrested, even if he did or didn't do anything wrong, and this case is still in court, we don't have anywhere near enough information. There's probably enough for them to get rid of him if they want to anyway.
Do you know what I think? And this goes back to execs again, because and the only reason I keep bringing up like the execs of the issue is because Marvel got so big as a moneymaker, it gets like the execs want to control it because they want their money. It wouldn't surprise me if they're too blind to understand that people's issues with Ant-Man wasn't Kang and it was how the story and the visuals, because they don't see what they did for that film as an issue. But it's like they're like, oh well, everyone hated it. We must move away from the main villain. It's got you. Go find us another villain. Focus someone else. And
do you know what this stinks of though? Because if we actually think about Marvel historically, only one villain has ever really had multiple appearances, and that was Loki, and he ended up not being a villain by the end.
Yeah, before like Thanos then started having all this.
But even then, Thanos was only there for 2 films, and that was one story. He just had cameos up until that. He wasn't even a villain yet. He was just lurking in the background. Every other villain we got once.
Yeah.
And this just reeks of, oh, we've used him now. That film wasn't good. That must mean the villain was the problem. We can't use him again. It's like, no, the biggest criticism of Infinity Saga Marvel was that good villains got wasted and left to die for no fucking reason.
Yeah, and like all used in, even in these new ones, like we've had villains used in such poor ways for what they could be. Like look at Thor. We had the God Butcher, and he didn't really get to do much God Butchering, and then was yeah, and it's like, well, that was a waste.
Yeah,
because Kang was their focus, and it's not good things to be coming out of Marvel when everyone's already got a spotlight on them for the films aren't doing great, and everyone, like the casual fans have been lost, and people are complaining there's too many things going on.
I don't want to have to be relying on Prime Video solely for good superhero content.
We shouldn't have to be, but it is going that way at the moment.
Yeah, and when we've got such a long wait before James Gunn's DCU is ready to go properly, I don't get nervous, but I'm getting a bit shaky, getting a bit worried. And up next on the execs are shitting their pants and don't know what to do.
Just want the money back.
Yeah, there is a growing idea being batted around to bring back the original Avengers cast, including resurrecting Black Widow and Iron Man.
Screams, we just want our money, and this made us money.
When did it stop working?
Oh, when you killed off
Widow and Iron Man died. Okay, so we need to bring them back, and the money comes back. Like,
I will only accept those 2 characters with their original actor and actress returning if it was in Secret Wars and it's like they've plucked them from a different timeline,
variants where they look identical but are slightly different. Yes, 100%.
I would have accepted that, and that would have been a very cool return for RDJ and Scarlett Johansson. I think it would have been very well received. To just pull them back and be like, oh, hi, they're back. Here's an Avengers film. It's like, what?
Well, yeah, and you've got to remember, if Secret War comes out in like 2027, that's 4 years' time. That's like 9 years since Endgame.
Yeah.
So, like, that's like a substantial enough period of time where you're like, fuck it, RDJ's back, that's lit.
Just making me like a bit of an older Iron Man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pure panic. And going back to what we were saying about the shit show that was Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's now come out as part of this, the VFX artists, once
the timeline
Ant-Man and the Wasp got pulled up in the release schedule.
Yeah.
VFX artists out of nowhere were crunched to work 14 hours a day with no overtime pay, sometimes 6 days a week.
It's just, and
2023.
The problem with as well is like people will probably say, why didn't these studios just say no? But it's not like when you're a studio and you get like a Marvel contract, that will be a huge book of work for your 100%. Studio. And without it, people don't have jobs. And while they could have tried to negotiate them to pay them more, Disney will have just turned around. If you don't want to do this, we'll go to a different studio. And it's like, and also when situations like this where they're told to crunch, it's like, if you're already halfway through, it's kind of just like, well, we're already in the thick of it now. We've got to push through and finish it. And you're not like these artists aren't going to abandon a project midway through because they're not getting paid correctly. Because while yes, it's a Marvel, like they're still invested in what they're creating, whether it's their thing or not. Like they're invested in putting in that artistic work and creating it. They're not going to just abandon something they've worked on for 6 months. Well, they have every right to complain.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy.
And it explains why some of the VFX felt weird, why the visuals just didn't feel to hit right, why MODOK looked weird in times, things like that. Like,
just treat workers like people, for the love of God. I understand that we do this weekly, and we would probably get a bit anxious if like stuff didn't come out as consistently. But I would rather us have to go, okay, we can only do it fortnightly, so that we've got enough to talk about, or even monthly in a really worst case scenario, which I don't think we'd ever get to. So that artists can work at a comfortable, respectable pace to do the work to a high quality and not have to work outrageous hours in outrageous conditions.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand this obsession with doing it quicker when it looks like shit. Like, there are genuinely people now talking about CGI from the early 2010s that looks just as good, at, if not better, because them artists were just given time. That's literally the only difference. The technology's better now.
It's like the visual effects can be better, but studios don't want to give them the time to do it properly.
Yeah, they'd rather them just do it quickly.
Yes.
I'm really just I'm over it.
I hope that for the nerd in us and the podcast, like what we enjoy from MCU, I hope they can right the ship and get back on the right footing. I worry that they're just going to make wrong decisions, is my worry. And it's going to get worse.
I reckon they get me in to take it over. Step aside. I've got it. But it's fine. Disney can't afford to pay their VFX artists or their actors fairly because they're too busy spending $8.61 billion to take full control over Hulu. So we discussed in the past how Hulu's a bit of a weird one. It's part owned by Disney, part owned by Comcast. So Disney are basically buying out Comcast part of the company for $8.61 billion. How dare they, when they're in the middle of a strike negotiation with the actors, claiming they can't afford to pay the actors, go out there and take full control over another streaming service for that amount of money?
Do you know what I think this is in partly is them? You've got to look at it this way, right? We know the man, the myth, the legend, Bob Iger, wants to sell to Apple. Like that's his goal, is he wants to sell to Apple. What makes Disney Plus and Disney like look good on the books? You've got prices going up. There's a worry that maybe people will cancel subscriptions. They're talking about password sharing and stuff. So their numbers of subscribers may drop. But you know what looks good? Buying the rest of Hulu and all the Hulu subscriptions and all that, all those numbers suddenly boost and make Disney look way better on the books. Makes it way more sellable. Oh, we've got this huge catalog of stuff now. Like, way more stuff. Like, it just screams to me that they're buying up stuff to make them look better on the books, to make them look better to sell.
Yeah.
While meanwhile trying to be like, no, we don't want to deal with you wanting better pay because we don't want to be the ones that have to do that because we want out.
Yeah,
But like you say, to do this while they're in negotiations it's a choice. It's a PR choice, and I
don't know who
feel
thought it was a good idea.
I feel sorry for the Disney PR department because they're ordinary people, and they're just doing their jobs, and the Disney execs are really just making them work for their money at the moment.
They're not making it easy for them.
No, they're really not.
Just even daring to consider a deal worth more than 10 million while you're squabbling over 0.03% of your global annual revenue for the people who would make the content to go on the platform is fucking outrageous.
It's wild. It's wild.
Bit of interesting news. I didn't know if we throw it in, but I'm interested by it. So
I'm excited
as well.
Been waiting for this.
For a new Planet of the Apes film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Well, is
this the fourth film in the reboot, or is this the third?
I thought this is the third.
It's been so long since we've had the last one, I feel now.
I'm pretty sure this is the
so you had Rise of.
You had Rise of, you had War. Oh wait, no, this is the fourth one then.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so Rise of, Dawn of, and then War for the Planet of the Apes. What year was that?
2017.
So it's been 6 years since the last one.
This is the wild thing, right? Because I always thought this was going to be a trilogy, the way they were setting it up. It was like we had Dawn of, we had Rise of, and I was like, oh, it's going to be Kingdom, like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes or whatever, or just Planet of the Apes. And that's going to be how. Then we got War, and I was like, well, this still feels like they need to finalize it as like the planet is now the Planet of the Apes, kind of setting up the idea from the original films where they went to a planet that was Planet of the Apes. So I mean, I've been excited and waiting for this, but
so this seems to be a bit. It seems to be a bit like of a time jump here. So many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define the future for apes and humans alike. And in the trailer, it seems to be like humans have become kind of feral wild animals.
Well, and gone into hiding, essentially.
Yeah. But it seems to be the orangutan from the original still seems to be cutting about, or at least a similar-ish character. And they seem to be kind of like of the opinion we should help them.
Yeah, I get the impression from the trailer it's the original orangutan guy. And probably because of he has memory of the time before.
Yeah.
Realizes that humans aren't all bad and that we shouldn't have like tried to wipe them out. And Caesar probably educates this new young ape on what happened in the past and how what you're taught nowadays is all lies, as happens with history a lot of the time.
Yeah, revisionist history written by the winners.
But
the winners of wars have never done anything wrong, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise.
But I'm very excited. Like the first three have been amazing films.
Planet of the Apes is a really cool franchise that always reinvents itself and comes back. I watched the originals like years ago because my granddad really enjoyed them. I was like, these look kind of like shit, but also fucking brilliant. I kind of love them.
Yeah, they had funky visuals, but they were solid concept of films. And then when they brought out the first one, the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes,
we got another reboot in our time, which was like 2000.
Yeah, it was weird.
Where he was like an astronaut that got like sent to a different planet. And then that one didn't do particularly well. And then we got a reboot properly.
Yeah, with the idea of it all humans got extinct. Like you could see where it was always building to, so it's been very like exciting each time a new one's come out to see the next.
Very, very cool. And I'm very intrigued by this one. It's coming out like next year.
Something like that,
yeah. So it'll be interesting. I've just Googled the 2001 Planet of the Apes film. I never realised how yoked this film was. So Tim Burton directed it. Mark Wahlberg was the lead. Helena Bonham Carter was, of course, in it because it's Tim Burton film. And Tim Roth was in it. Did he voice one of the monkeys? Maybe. He must have done. But yeah, so like there was just the one of them for whatever reason. I always quite liked that film, but I've not seen it in a while. Maybe it wasn't that good. But yeah, I'm well excited to get another one, and hopefully this leads to another solid Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah.
Right, now we've got some real sad news. Because this was a project I know both of us were very excited for.
Yeah.
So this was originally supposed to come out early 2024. But The Penguin, which is of course set in Matt Reeves' Batman universe, has apparently been delayed until fall 2024 due to studios being greedy scum. The problem with this delay is, if this doesn't get resolved soon, that is still going to be delayed further. So this is it's now just going to come out in full 2024. It's the earliest this is now going to come out is full 2024.
Yeah.
And this is where we're going to start to see the big problems
next year
from
the strikes,
refusing to pay actors.
Yeah, it's
so in 6 months' time, when all of you people are sat there going, "Oh, there's nothing on TV. I'm so bored. I'm having to rewatch 1,000,001 things." Remember that the studios could have just paid actors fairly, and they would have been able to get back to doing what they love doing.
Yeah,
but instead they wanted to try and keep all the pie for themselves.
It's such a shame. The only little positive I hold out is that between now and then, it gives them a little bit more time to figure out getting Warner Brothers stuff to the UK.
True.
Like, figure it out, boys. You've got a bit more time and we can maybe watch The Penguin properly.
Hopefully that dent to their bottom line incentivizes them to find a way to get it to the rest of the world so they can earn money.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And then I separate this out from the rest of the Marvel stuff. Because this was in different reports and is more of a rumor.
Yeah.
But does also make a bit of sense.
Also
cool. There is a lot of rumors, discussion, information being battered around suggesting that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine may be the dual leads for Avengers Secret War. With the idea being that the TVA at the end of Loki starts building an army to fight against the Kang variants. But instead of just from one timeline, they want to build an army to just fight Kang in general. So they go to different universes to find their best heroes. And Tobey Maguire and Hugh Jackman are the best heroes from their world.
Yeah.
And Tom Holland would lead the MCU's world.
That'd be pretty cool.
I am willing to concede that it is nostalgia bait.
Probably.
And it is playing on our emotions. And it is not 100% necessary, and it is just there to get a cheap thrill and put people's butts in seats. But I do have a counterpoint. It will be the greatest film ever fucking made. I want it.
It would be sick to get this.
One last hurrah.
Yeah, I guess in a way, it comes down to how believable this actually ends up being. Comes down to what happens in Deadpool 3.
Yes,
and
we heard rumors that Miss Minutes was supposed to be in Deadpool 3. Them rumors are like 6 months old.
Okay,
and if you remember, the Miss Minutes Twitter account, which is an official account, was tweeting at the Deadpool 3 Twitter account.
Potentially
when they announced that he was coming into the MCU.
There was obviously said about that the Logan film is still canon to the what goes on in Deadpool 3. So it's like, whatever goes on there with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, it's like, I think we'll decide what if we see him again in Secret Wars, or if they do something with that story and that's where his story now ends, and Hugh Jackman it was his last hurrah then, maybe. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's come back having so much fun and like, well, we got this idea, and he's like, yeah, fuck it. Like, I want to keep doing this. Maybe. Yeah. But it's an interesting rumor.
I am 100% okay for them to go all in on the nostalgia bait and get all the people that we loved growing up in on this film, as long as they leave it at that there, and they don't keep trying to use the people we grew up with for a cheap thrill. Spider-Man
I do agree.
Home, I was okay with it because they brought Spider-Man together.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman in Deadpool 3 absolutely makes sense. Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are really close friends. We know that the Deadpool films take place in the Fox universe where Hugh Jackman was Wolverine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Secret Invasion, bringing everything together for the big reset or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a multiversal story. I'm okay for it being done there. After that, no more.
Yeah.
You keep the actors you keep. You recast who you recast. You trim off all of the shit that's happened before, and you do one thing.
I'm with you. I'm all for Secret Wars being a way for them to bring people back for the nostalgia, for essentially that last hurrah for a lot of the characters or actors and actresses as those characters. And then, after that, that's it. No more. Like I said earlier, I'm totally down with them bringing back RDJ as Iron Man in Secret War. It makes sense. It works. It doesn't ruin his story. The whole idea of the Secret War is like pulling all these people together. It's like, it would be very cool. And it wouldn't surprise me with the success of kind of the Spider-Man and having all three of them and how much that was loved. The idea of bringing back heroes in the right way, I think it wouldn't surprise me if we do see something like that for Secret War. Whether it is exactly, it does have Tobey Maguire and Hugh Jackman as the main lead, like, who knows? But I do think we will get some old school people get returns in that film.
I hope so. I hope so. Content Championship time.
It is indeed.
We've got another dirty one.
It is another dirty week.
While I enjoy this segment, it's not something I like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was a fun idea, and then it's like you actually have to do it, and you just feel bad.
Do you know what it is? It's like that. Not that I've done it in a long time, but you know, like doing exercise, and like afterwards, you're like, "Oh, I'm glad I did that. I feel better for doing that." But you hate every second of it while you're doing it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's kind of like that. So, this week's Content Championship is, of course, Daredevil versus Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings. As always, we have our 6 headers we use to try and make this more palatable.
Yes.
Which are personal relevance, how well we think it has aged, rewatchability of said project. Then we have the story, the acting, and the cinematography / general visuals. Let's get right into it. So, my personal relevance hasn't changed for these at all. There's no new context to add to these because why would there be? Personal relevance is, of course, for the Daredevil Netflix show, is it brought Daredevil to the mainstream fandom in a way that few other individual projects can do for a character. For better or for worse, there are now some people who think they know Daredevil who don't know as much as they think they know. But that's always going to happen. But it did, and it also got it got the bad taste of the Ben Affleck film out of our mouths and showed that Daredevil
no one even thinks about that anymore.
Yeah. It showed that Daredevil can be badass in live action.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, you've got the Fellowship of the Rings. And as I said last time, we discussed Fellowship. It's like the first film in what is largely regarded as one of the greatest trilogies of all time, as well as creating an entire new generation of fantasy fans.
Mm-hmm.
Being real in the modern world, how much do you reckon that Lord of the Rings trilogy did for D&D and all other fantasy, just fantasy as a
Oh,
genre?
as
So much.
yeah.
The amount of people who never thought about fantasy worlds, who when they were in their formative years watched Lord of the Rings and were like, oh, this is awesome, and then they just found any way they could to go back to these kind of fantasy worlds, like
Yeah,
inspiring, changing, just different.
like not wrong at all. I mean, yeah, for personal relevance for me, it's like you've got, like you say, Daredevil brought it to the masses. I didn't really know Daredevil before that. It also, like, it set a new precedent of what a superhero TV show could be. We only had like the CW or any of the older stuff that was very old school in how they did things. Brought a whole new look to like the idea of a superhero show and
Yeah,
started
100%.
a new era in that sense. But then it's Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is what sparked my love for fantasy. What's like was the trilogy film growing up. Like that, it's Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. That is what births all nerds in this universe. Maybe Star Trek. But that is the birthplace of all nerds. And
100%.
yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think it completely revitalized like fantasy for a whole new generation. And just like it's Lord of the Rings. Like it's everything. Like I remember watching the first bit, like the first film, and opening your eyes to that whole world was just changed the world.
How well has it aged? In our entire bracket, these might be two of the strongest competitors in this category. Because
Yeah,
Daredevil is seen as the gold standard for superhero TV.
yeah.
And every time we get a show not as good as Daredevil, which is basically every show, people just point at Daredevil and go, just do that again. And then on the flip side, you have Lord of the Rings,
which you'll never be able to replicate again.
aged so phenomenally well that it is actually like just how well it is aged has actually made the fandom a little bit unbearable because they don't want anyone to even consider telling stories in that universe again because they're like, no, leave it, it's perfect.
Yeah, don't mess with what is.
Yeah,
Don't ruin it. No, I think you're right. I like Daredevil is, although it's not really that old in the grand scheme of things, like it's aged so well that like every superhero show, people look at it and they go, well, Netflix could do it. Why can't you do it properly? Like it set the precedent, like I said before, like this is the new standard of what we want everything to live up to. You're not meeting it. We still love that show. We still talk about it. So, but Lord of the Rings, like it's just any fantasy thing that comes out, like anything, you're like, but look at what Lord of the Rings did back in the day. Like even The Hobbit came out and it's like, the Lord of the Rings did it better and it's older. Like it's
yeah.
just such a well put together trilogy that
It didn't
like,
compromise on anything. It just made sure it did it right.
and like it doesn't feel like anyone's got close to ever replicating that feeling from the Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings.
Rewatchability.
I would actually be more inclined to sit down, watch Lord of the Rings, knowing full well that then means I'm watching the whole trilogy before I'd consider watching Daredevil.
I think Daredevil is inherently very rewatchable because it strikes that perfect balance of you can happily binge it, but it was before Netflix got so heavy on the we're going to make you binge it all that the cuts weren't as aggressive, which meant you could also watch one episode and go, I'll come back to that. I'll watch another episode tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I find TV shows inherently more rewatchable.
Yeah.
However, Lord of the Rings. I've since we discussed this the first time, I have got semi-verbal confirmation from Jenna that can be the first thing we binge watch at the new house when we move in.
What a way to
Because she's never seen Lord of the Rings.
What?
Hey, you need to remember she grew up in an all-female household because her father died when she was
Still, there are some
Um,
strong female characters in that.
Lord of the Rings wasn't the kind of thing that got watched in their house.
Hey, Aragorn. Need I say more?
So that'll probably be one of the first. It'll be like okay, we have nothing to do this weekend. Let's watch Lord of the Rings. It'll be great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But I still view it as a knock on. Bearing in mind we're just talking about the Fellowship here.
Still,
I find rewatchability of the Fellowship more difficult because you have to watch the extended cut, which is like 3.5 hours.
Okay.
And you will want to watch the entire trilogy, which is a big time commitment.
Just a bonus,
which means when I'm thinking about watching something, I would rather watch 3.5 hours of Daredevil because I'm like, I can put that down and come back to it very easily, rather than watching that because then I'm like, right, well, I'm now up until we finish the trilogy. And I think
okay
that is a slight on the rewatchability for me personally.
See, I'm willing to put myself through that for the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you also work from home.
I don't see what this has to do with anything.
You can just watch them all on a loop on your second monitor while you're cracking on.
I'm just gonna get a TV when I have my own place. I'm just gonna have a monitor with a second computer on it. It's just loop all of Star Wars and into all of Lord of the Rings, back into all of Star Wars.
That's what we need. We need a Spotify style app for nerd stuff. And you can build playlists of certain moods, and you just have a little like Fire Stick type thing that runs it plugged into a TV above your setup. So you just sit down to work, and it's just gonna loop like episodes of your favorite nerd shows, your favorite films, and so you just be like, oh, Empire Strikes Back, sick, and then Empire Strikes Back's finished, and you get like a random episode of like Loki or whatever, and you're like, sick. Oh, I remember this one.
Yep.
That's what my brain is.
Yeah.
Story.
I mean, does it really need to be discussed? I don't know if you can compete with an amazing trilogy of books.
We need to put this into context. Because of course, Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece. It is one of the greatest pieces of fiction written. That isn't up for debate. And it is the Fellowship is adapted beautifully from the source material. But I don't want that to discredit how phenomenal the Daredevil story is.
I'm not saying it's bad.
But this is what always hurts the most about these and why these are so dirty. Because we sit here and we gush over something and we're like, oh, it's so good.
Yep.
And it feels like while we're gushing over one thing, we're just like flipping the finger off to the other one.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But like, as superhero media goes, the Daredevil show is some of the best writing we've actually seen.
And I'd be tempted to say it's like the best origin story we've had.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's like to be able to tell that on TV, and it was like set this new era of what was expected from the story of like a TV superhero show.
And the way Netflix did their villains, not just in Daredevil but also in Jessica Jones, because they did the same style. And it's my favorite way to do a villain is they have this person who is bad guy. You know they're bad guy straight away. And then once they've introduced you to the bad guy, you then get more from the bad guy, and they make them a sympathetic character because they've had a shit childhood, they've been beaten up, they've been bullied, they've been made to feel less, and you start to feel sorry for them. You're like, oh, I can see how they end up in this position. And then just they lure you into the bad guy, and you're like, oh, they're not all bad. They then do something completely irredeemable, and you're like, you piece of shit. And it's beautiful because it's like, oh, bad guy, maybe not so bad. Oh, they're terrible.
Yeah.
And like that's really good writing, and it makes it sound so simple because it's like, okay, cool. So you tell a sob story, you feel better for the bad guy, and then you have them do something so bad that you're like, oh no, they're definitely bad. But there's more to it than that because you can't just do it really like obnoxiously.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I had bad childhood. You have to genuinely get the writing across in such a way where you genuinely start to feel bad for the person, and some of the bad things they do initially don't seem that bad.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like Wilson Fisk, the
Yep.
first person he killed was his abusive father.
Yep.
And I don't think any sane person watching that, having seen how vile his father was, goes, "Oh, that's evil."
Yeah.
It's like, no, he did that because he was trying to protect his mother and himself. Like, you get that.
Yeah.
But like I said, Lord of the Rings is the greatest fictional story ever
Yeah,
told.
this is the tough thing. It's against Lord of the Rings. And it's
Yeah.
like, there's a reason it's the best trilogy of films, because it is one of the greatest series of books ever. It's like,
And it adapts faithfully.
yeah.
Which is always the biggest stumbling block for books being turned into films.
Yeah.
That's why we got shit Percy Jackson films, and now we're getting a really good TV show, hopefully.
It's like, they knew what they were doing. Like, they were like, we have great source material. There's no need to stray away from it. Let's just visualize it.
Yeah.
And then, boom, there we have it.
Let's just make 5-hour films. Who cares?
Yeah.
They're nerds. They'll watch it.
Exactly.
Acting. This is definitely a closer category.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings is fairly stacked, though.
Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox are
they
sublime castings.
They are excellent castings, and they played each role incredibly, and they are those characters through and through.
But Lord of the Rings might have one of the most super-powered casts known to mankind.
Well, one thing, Gandalf. Just Gandalf.
Yeah.
Like, is there a better casting?
They just have so many nerd icons that are just so phenomenally good. Andy Serkis as Gollum.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, this is the issue with this one. It's like, you're stacking someone against, like, the god. Like, it's just, the cast is incredible. Everyone's performances are amazing. Like,
and cinematography.
I mean, New Zealand.
New Zealand's gorgeous. The Shire is gorgeous. And Peter Jackson had the balls to do what people are scared to do now. And instead of just, for realism, it has to be dark so the people can't see anything, he gets asked, where's the light coming from? And he goes to the same place as the music.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a battle at night. Guess what? The people still need to see what's happening. Otherwise, what's the fucking point of a battle at night?
Yeah.
We'll
and also,
put
it's
some
like,
lights on there. We won't make it look like it's daytime, but people need to see what's happening.
He didn't shy away from making people wear full outfits and actually trek up a mountain for the shot.
Yeah.
Like, the dedication to it all, it being as practical as possible.
It's always the way to go.
Yeah. There's a reason it still lives up to this day.
I yearn for the opportunity for a publisher to come to us and get us to write a comic book, and then someone to come to us and give us the ability to turn their comic book into a film, and we get to just sit there in that first meeting and go, if it's not practical, it's not fucking happening.
Yeah, everyone is in practical suits. Costume designers need to figure it out.
The VFX guys are there for touch-ups and the physically impossible. If we have to go miniatures and a drone, we will do that before VFX get involved.
I will do a Lego figure as a stunt double if I have to.
Yeah. Like, we're not fucking about here. Practical is always going to be better as a base. I have no issue with VFX being used to touch stuff up and enhance it, but you've got to give it a real as possible base to make it look good.
And don't get us wrong. Daredevil had some stunning visuals. That famous corridor wanna, like, stunning, very practical as well. Like, they did an incredible job for a TV show. They did the Netflix budget for a superhero TV show. Like, that's why it's the best.
I would say, in the only point that might potentially sway people towards Daredevil in this category, is that the long one-shot fight sequences we got a couple of times.
Yeah, the ones.
They were a thing in, like, Japanese and Korean action films. This was the first project that brought it to the West so well.
Yep, did it properly.
To the point where now, if I spot them, like, setting one up, I get excited.
Yeah.
Because there is something about a long one-shot sequence that I love. And just as an example of when it's done wrong, how infuriating it is. In the most recent James Bond film, they do one. They do a really, really good one, fighting upstairs. It's fucking awesome. Me and my brother, who both love these shots, like we're absolute losers for these shots, they're like, yeah, this is fucking good. Then 2 seconds before the end of the sequence, they cut for no reason.
Yeah, I don't.
So, like, I shit you not, they cut, and then there's one more punch to end the fighting, and it's like, why have you cut?
Yeah.
And it's just, and this is the thing, you've got to do it all in one shot and make sure it's all done properly, otherwise it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
And I've not seen really any other Western projects consistently get that shit right, and they did it consistently.
Oh yeah, like Daredevil, like did some incredible things for a TV show, but again, it's against Lord of the Rings. It's like it's just an uphill fight for them.
So let's go through these and work out exactly how upsetting this scoring is.
Okay.
Personal relevance, I think we're both going to give Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
How well it's aged goes to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Rewatchability, I give to Daredevil.
I give to Lord of the Rings.
So that's halved.
Okay.
Story is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Acting, I really struggle with. Because yes, that Lord of the Rings cast is iconic, but Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio were names to the majority of the world and became superstars.
Yeah, I could give that a tie because they did put on incredible performances.
Yeah, and cinematography is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So it's 4-0.
Yeah,
it's a battering.
It's unfortunate that, but I mean, anyone against Lord of the Rings was gonna struggle
vehemently.
Yeah.
But that does not mean you should not go and watch Daredevil because it is phenomenal.
It is.
And you should absolutely go watch it. Next week is also horrific and angry. I don't want to. I'm quitting the podcast. I don't want to do this shit anymore. Next week is Punisher. Versus Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Yikes!
I hate it here. Why do we do this to ourselves?
I think it's a bit easier for me, but
we did this and we're like, oh yeah, let's move away from superhero showdowns. This will be a lot more interesting because there's more actual stuff we can think about.
Yeah.
And it just ended up after a couple of weeks just being our own little personal torture.
Yeah.
But that is it from us this week. Next week, episode 90. What a nice round number as well for such a stacked week.
It is, actually.
We'll, of course, have Loki, penultimate episode, Gen V finale, the opening of Invincible Season 2. We probably need to talk about a preview for the Marvels as well, because that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
It's chaos.
We're
going to have a character profile on Carnage next week, because the episode is going to be total carnage.
Nice. See what you did there.
It's just chaos. Based on the shithousery of Marvel this week, there's probably going to be more Marvel leaks for next week as well. Who even knows anymore? Yeah. Get liked, get subscribed. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.